Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. Today we're talking garden tips. Uh, if this is your first garden, maybe it's not, but you're looking at some advice on how to have a really healthy garden. There's going to be a lot of options, a lot of videos out there that want to tell you some things, but I want to break this down to make it understandable. We're going to have some cards and things like that to help. So the first thing we're going to discuss is the NPK value. So the N, the very first thing you're going to see on there, it is the most important when you're first starting off at seedling stage. The N stands for nitrogen. So what does the nitrogen do? If you've seen the card up there, we're going to add a little bit of information to that, guys. So nitrogen, what that is going to do is that's really going to boost your plant in its seedling stage going into vegetative stage. You typically don't want to start adding a lot of nitrogen until about your second week of that plant having popped from its seed. Once you start adding nitrogen to it, add it in slow. Don't just come straight out and just dump some really hot fertilizers on it, because you're going to burn your plant. You don't want to do that. If you burn it, it's going to stun it or kill it. If in a best case scenario, you're just going to stun it, but it's not really going to produce if you do that. So wait till about the second or third week after that seed has come up. You want to see at least 2 nodes come up on that plant. For those who don't know what I'm talking about with the node, the very first leaves that you see, what that is, that's not a true leaf, guys. That opens the shell. When that opens up, it's opening the shell on that plant. Okay, that pops open the shell. That is not a set of leaves. It kind of works as it, but it's not very good at conducting chlorophyll and things like that. So you're going to see in the middle of that, you'll see your first set of leaves start to come out. And once you see that, you're very well onto your stage of having a small vegetable plant or a flower, depending on what you're growing, guys. Whenever you see the second leaf come up underneath that set, you can start thinking about, okay, maybe I can add a seedling fertilizer if you would like. I would personally wait until that third set of leaves comes out, and I'm not talking just appears, but when the third set comes out, your leaves are, depending on the vegetable, they're going to be 2 or 3 times the size of the first leaves that you see pop out. At that point, you are ready to start adding fertilizer to your plants. You do not want to go too hot. You want to use fertilizers that has an NPK value where you have a good nitrogen content, which is going to be your N. And then you also need to look at that P. So what is that? That is phosphorus. Okay, so you're going to look at that. You want to have a good phosphorus level as well. And typically the phosphorus level is going to be a little higher than your nitrogen, and it's going to be a little higher than that K value, which we're going to get into what the K is stand for as well. And what that phosphorus does is it really boosts the root growth of your plant. And the faster, the deeper and the wider your root ball is, that plant is going to be larger. So you really want, at an early stage, a little bit low on nitrogen, pretty good on phosphorus, and then you kind of want a little bit lower on the K, which actually stands for potassium. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the phosphorus levels. So phosphorus, things you need to understand when you're dealing with phosphorus. I've seen some videos where people actually go out and they buy just phosphorus. They buy phosphine, things like that. And you have to be very careful with that stuff, guys, because there's a lot of people like, they want this massive root ball. If you are on a well, you want to make sure your garden is nowhere near your well, because there is a such thing as phosphine poisoning. And what that is you have an excessive amount of phosphorus getting into your well water supply, into the groundwater table. So I don't recommend just going out and just buying stuff that has phosphorus. You can look at your plants that you're composting. Certain plants, certain types of things that you're going to break down into your compost pile are going to create either nitrogen, phosphorus, or it's going to create potassium. So there's a lot of great options, something to think about. If you have animals that are eating a lot of grass, okay, for those of you with goats and cows and things like that, when you look at, and we're not trying to be disgusting on this channel, but this is the easiest way to understand. If you can look at that dropping and it has like plant matter in it, you can clearly see the plant matter. That type of dropping can be applied at the beginning of your garden. It's not going to have a very high nitrogen level. It is going to have a very good phosphorus level on there. So that's something to think about. Now, when you start getting into bird manure, whether it's chicken or quail, you don't see that plant matter there. That is a high nitrogen content. And your tomato plants, your cucumbers, things like that, they are going to love that once they get to the stage that they need that. So with my plants that I have outside, and we'll do a tour of the garden, guys, it's really coming in good. Uh, my plants were indoors from seed stage for 3 weeks before they even moved outside. Now, when they moved outside, I focused on a phosphorus fertilizer. So what I'd done is, you can get cow manure. It works great. You work it in, you can make a compost tea out of it. You can layer it around your plant if you'd like. You can use peat moss, things like that as well. And as it breaks down, it's creating more phosphorus than it is nitrogen. And that stuff really worked good. And my plants have now rooted in good. So once your plants have had a couple of weeks to really take root, it's time to start thinking about adding that nitrogen in there, and that's going to explode their growth. So you've seen some of the videos where I've made the quail manure compost tea. That's out there. And it's really starting to kick in. You do not want to use any kind of high nitrogen when you get to the point of uh, actually producing fruits or vegetables or flowers and things like that, because it will stunt your plant. It will continue to focus on its leaf growth and things like that as well. So why is it important to understand what these values are? It really is, and you're going to understand that better at the base of this video here, guys. So when you're coming out of, say, if you've got your plant and it's the size you want, the sun's going to dictate a lot on this too, how much sunlight you're getting versus dark. When you start seeing your first blooms, that's the flowers that's going to produce your vegetables, or the blooms that are going to produce your flowers. Like I say, this will work for any type of garden, guys. When you see that, then you need to be dropping your nitrogen values, raising your phosphorus value a little bit, but you really need to start focusing on the potassium at that point. And we're going to explain why. What is potassium? Why does it help with our plants? That is the K value on your fertilizer plants. All right, guys, so potassium, what is it going to do? Well, we know that phosphorus is going to help. It's going to help a few things. It's going to help with the roots. It's going to help give you them strong stems. It's going to hold your tomato plants up, where you're not having to go out and add extra sticks to hold your tomatoes in place and things, or whatever type of vegetable or fruit that you're trying to grow, or flowers you're trying to do. It's going to strengthen your stems. It's going to strengthen your root. But when you start getting into like your really big vegetables and your fruits and things, your squash and your say if you're doing watermelons and things, you really need to start adding that potassium in there, guys, because what that's going to do is that is going to increase the, not just the bloom rate, it's going to keep you producing. Okay, so as your vegetables are coming off the vines or plants, if you continue to feed that potassium, man, they're going to start making new blooms. All right, if you're keeping your phosphorus level about midway, you're having a really good potassium level, you're going to continue to make blooms, you're going to continue to produce on your plants, and you're going to be able to take and have larger fruits and vegetables come off as well. It's going to help out with a lot of your large plants. Say if you're growing those really big tomatoes, if you're growing any kind of melon, whether it's watermelon, honeydew, cantaloupe, if you're doing things such as squash and you're wanting the real big squash, if you're growing gourds, there's a lot of people that are getting into gourds, because that was one of the first containers that we had back with the early settlements and stuff, was gourds, and there's a lot of use for those things as well, guys. So something to look at as well. And you want to make sure that you're following kind of these little tips here as your plants are reaching stages. So I hope you're enjoying the video, guys. We're going to do a tour of the garden. I hope that's kind of made it a little simpler without going into all these scientific terms and things like that. So NPK, understand, it's laid out exactly how your plant needs. What's the first thing your plant's going to need? It's going to need nitrogen. It's going to need, does anybody know? What's it going to need? It's going to need phosphorus. Phosphorus is going to help with the root growth. That's why anytime you look at a young stage plant development, it's going to have a little bit It's not going to be too high. It's a little lower on nitrogen. It's going to be a little bit higher with phosphorus, and it's almost going to be non-existent when it comes to our potassium. And as you're going into the greater stage of that plant's development, before it starts to actually produce fruits, and understand when I say fruits, I'm talking not just fruit trees. I'm talking any kind of food you're going to pull off of that, guys. You want to raise that value up. That's going to be continuing to help. Your potassium level is going to start to drop. Your nitrogen level is going to start to come up in your fertilizers. And as you add that in, your nitrogen is going to make that plant bigger. You're still giving enough for root development and stem development. And as you start seeing the flowers appear, you switch over to a bloom booster if you would like to. A lot of times people will keep separate compost piles, so things that's going to produce a lot of potassium is going to be like banana peels. You want to wash those things, guys, because they have pesticides and all kinds of stuff on it. You don't want that getting into your garden. But you wash those up. A lot of times you can just take them and put it in boiling water. It's going to release those chemicals off of it and things like that as well. You can. They have these things where people actually will burn it. And you can do it that way if you want to, and just use the ash to feed into it as well. You do lose a little bit of the potassium values, but there's so many different options you can have. Your eggshells are going to have a really good calcium source for tomato plants. And you don't, I've seen people make this mistake. They'll take an eggshell and they'll just set it by the plant. Don't do that. I'll tell you how to do your eggshells. So eggshells are going to have a really good source of potassium and phosphorus to it as well as the calcium that the plant needs. And what you do is you take those eggshells and you want to dry them out. You want to crush them up. And the proper way to do that is to then burn them. All right, making ash out of them. But if you're putting them in a pulverizer and you're turning it into a powder, your plants will receive that as well. It's a soluble calcium, and you can take and you can dust around your plant at that point. If you're just taking eggshell and just setting it out right by the plant, it's not going to do anything. I've seen some people take raw eggs, crack it, and put it in there. The problem with that, guys, is you're going to have a stinky plant, or you're going to draw in some kind of a predator you don't want, whether it's a raccoon or a possum, and he's going to dig your plant up because he's going to go, oh, hey, there's something good under here. And he's going to dig your plant up, and you come out the next day and he's tore your plant up. So I prefer using actual fertilizer. I prefer composting my own stuff, guys. And we'll go more into depth with this stuff. So let's go take a tour of our garden, kind of show you what we've got going on and how things are looking already. Okay, guys, so right here we have our cucumber, squash, and zucchini seeds. Well, I guess I should say plants. They're no longer seeds. As you can see, they're doing pretty good out here, guys. A couple of them looks like they got stunted down. Some of these I placed some seeds out because I spaced some of it too far apart, guys. Then over here we're going to have, get on this other row here. These are just starting to come in, but these are going to be beets, okay? And then as we come down, right about here, we start getting into our corn. So we're going to have our corn. It's starting to sprout in pretty good. So that quail compost tea that I've been using with some of these other plants that are a little bit older, as you can see, I need to come out and weed again. And it doesn't take long. You just come out and just pick these things that are not part of your garden right out. And you can throw them completely out, or you can do what like I do, which is to just expose the root on it. Sorry, guys. Expose the root on it. That is there's grass. As you can see, I haven't been out here in a few days, and this little stuff will sprout out. So our corn is starting to grow in pretty good. Once that gets a little older, we're going to start adding some fertilizers and things like that to it. We'll be focusing with the quail manure for the nitrogen content. So over here we have our watermelon has finally popped up. I planted a few more of the cherry tomato plant seeds out here, and they have been coming up. So these are they're about 2 weeks now. So as you can see here, when I'm talking about nodes, see this set of leaves here? All right. That there is not a leaf. That is what helped open the seed. Here's a leaf node. Here's a leaf node. And at the top we have our sprout. Once that comes up, we will start adding nitrogen to that as well. This one here looks like it's doing very well. We have 3 defined nodes, and we will start adding some fertilizer. I expect by next Monday we'll come out with some compost tea here. This one here is one of our cherry tomato bushes. It's doing great. This is one I started inside. Here's another one. This is coming into our beefsteak tomatoes, guys. So these are going to be the larger tomatoes. I just came out and I put some nitrogen-rich compost tea on these yesterday. And what you want to watch for, if you look at the ends of the leaves here, if you see them turning like yellow and then brown, it means that your nitrogen content is too high. So definitely keep an eye on your plants. This is actually the sun glaring here. There's nothing wrong with them leaves there. But if you see it start turning yellow and dying, it means you have too much nitrogen. And here is another tomato plant. All right, now coming into here, we have, I believe these were radishes or turnips. I should have marked my garden, guys, because I know what I have out here, but I just don't remember where it's all at. I believe that these were radishes, though, coming down through here. And then I planted some cabbage, and nothing has come up as of yet. So I'm going to give this another week. If nothing sprouts over here, guys, this is going to get turned into more okra, I am sure. I love okra. I love to fry it. I love to put it in stews. So then over here, we're going to have a lot of turnips. And as you can see, sometimes your rows get washed by the rain. No big deal. We have more radishes coming in. So these here, I do not use quail poop on these guys, and the reason for that is this is under the ground. I do not really want to be eating that. If you have properly composted, you shouldn't have an issue, but you can pick up salmonella and things like that. So you can use a store-bought organic fertilizer, which is what I ended up getting for these particular plants here, just because I don't have enough compost in the back right now. Right here we're coming into our okra. They popped up as around, I guess maybe Friday or so. This here, again, dollar weed. You could actually eat this. They used to make lettuce out of that. I don't care about eating it, but if I need it, there's plenty of it around, guys. And that's the thing too, is, you know, nature provides as well. You know, the Lord's going to provide a lot of what you need. Some more okra coming down through here. And the reason I'm thinking about putting more okra in, guys, again, it's just one of them things that I love to eat, guys. All right, so over here, I went ahead and I put in a few more squash plants. They seem to be doing good. You can see where a cat or something has come up and has dug one of my plants out. And that happens sometimes when you have cats running around or any types of animals. This was supposed to be some more radishes. I don't know what happened to them. I don't see it. So they did not come up. So we're going to have to figure out what to put in there as well. So over here, I'm sorry, not radish. That was supposed to be spinach there. Over here we do have some of our lettuce coming up. These here are going to be hot chili peppers. As you see, these plants seem to be doing good. Coming over more, we start coming into, we have 2 different types of lettuce out here and some more spinach coming down. And then we have a couple of more cucumber plants. Make that 3. And then we're coming into our larger head lettuce. Now as these are coming in, I'm going to have to take these and actually space them out